everyone's like, who has more followers? Which video has the most views? But that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing that you've put out there or that you have to offer.
I mean, a lot of things that you don't expect to do well are the ones that do the best, and vice versa. The songs that you spend the most time and energy and resources on are sometimes just completely fall flat as a musician, as an artist. And I always tell artists, future artists, like, just write a really good song and the rest will do itself. The rest will come out in the wash, and just know that you did everything you could do to make it great, because that's really what it is. 99% of this whole thing is just timing and luck, and waiting your turn to have another moment. So yeah.
It's 2024 and you have heard it all before. Content is king, and some people have been creating content a little longer than others. Today's guest is someone special. Your childhood, a beautiful soul, Jesse McCartney. Welcome to the C Word.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you. I know you just finished tour, you've had a lot going on, so let's get right to the celebrations. You just celebrated 20 years of the song that was the soundtrack to so many people's teenagers. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was 20 years old. It's hard to believe. In many ways, it feels like it was yesterday, but when I look back on it, yeah, definitely 20 years ago. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I didn't realize it had been that long until I saw your TikTok video.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It came out in 2004, I believe. So here we are, 20 years later, and I just finished this big tour here in the U.S. and it's one of those songs that's crossed over into a new generation. There's like young people singing it again, and with their moms, and yeah, just like it's one of those pop songs that's crossed over into a new group of people, and pretty rare in pop. And yeah, a song I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, it's crazy because I do still hear it, and I feel like we're still playing it on certain radio stations here in Malaysia as well. So,
Good.
how, what do you remember about that time and like the creation of the song itself?
Well, I remember, I was living in New York at the time, and I remember putting together this demo of a bunch of songs that I found on a publishing service that I really liked, and recording it, and then it being played on Disney radio. I remember being played on like AM radio, which back then, it was cool to be on Disney radio, but it wasn't like the big, mainstream top 40 stations. And then like slowly the song just keeps doing really well on Disney and on Disney radio. And then eventually the record companies called and they're like, hey, we want to meet this guy. And so I got signed after the song was released. And all of a sudden I'm signing a deal, a major record deal. And the next thing I know, it's all over the country. The song is blowing up everywhere. And then eventually the song went global. And within a year of me recording the song, I was, traveling around the world and performing it live. And my life completely changed from that point on. But it was kind of a whirlwind. I mean, I remember very specific experiences, like my first time being on stage in places like Japan or Italy or in Australia. And I remember very specific scenarios, but then a lot of it is just a blur, like I just traveled so much and I was touring so much that it just became like this little, like this blip in my life that was just so intense. But yeah, one of those moments. Thank goodness for, like, having video footage and cameras and all of that, because we documented a lot of it. And one day I'll have to watch it all. But for the most part, I don't really remember much of it.
I feel like it was a very different time. Obviously, social media wasn't like a huge thing, and like we definitely didn't have TikTok, but I feel like the parallels are there. Like getting signed after the song went huge. That's
Yeah.
basically what every TikTok artist experiences, right? They have a song blow up and everything, then they get the record deal.
Well, they don't have a song that blows up. They go viral for a dance usually, or they have a lot of followers for doing something other than singing generally. But yes, I know what you're saying. Yeah, there are some parallels for sure. I think, in this case, I was also coming out of a boy band that had done relatively well on the East Coast, and I had been signed to a record deal before in a band. And the song had saturated enough that there were other things going on. I was on a television show as well that was quite successful. But yes, there's definitely some parallels in that, you see young TikTokers now. I know record companies are basically just signing people with, hundreds of thousands of followers because of a TikTok that went viral. They're trying to cash in on it. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of similarities.
Do you think if you were just starting out today, you would be able to catch that viral TikTok wave? Like, would you be able to think of like a dance move or something that you think would catch on?
It's hard to say because I'm not a very good dancer. I'm an okay dancer, and I was not a really good dancer at 16 for sure. So I don't know that had been making like dance videos. I probably would have been making like prank videos or something, comical or in the comedy world. Um, but yeah, I mean, this generation's TikTok was like our generation's AOL or something, or the Nextel walkie-talkie phones, or the Sidekick. I mean, every generation has their thing that they're known for, but yeah, I probably would have joined the trend like everybody else.
Well, I think the craziest thing when we think about that time, Beautiful Soul, is obviously the viral song.
Mhm.
But that wasn't even your highest charting hit, right? Leaving was.
Leavin' was the my first number one at radio. I forget where it was on Billboard, but yeah, Leavin' was definitely the highest charting hit, but it didn't last. It didn't have like the same duration that Beautiful Soul did, and certainly not the impact that Beautiful Soul had.
Mhm.
Beautiful Soul definitely had this sort of it was like a cultural moment for our
For
generation, I
sure.
think. And Leavin' was more of just like a follow up and one of those hit records that you hear and you're like, oh yeah, he also sang that song. But it's not usually the first song that comes to a lot of people's mind. But and stylistically it was a lot different. But yeah, Leavin' was technically speaking the higher charting song.
Yeah, I was thinking like, because obviously before talking to you, I was like going through um all your social media, Wikipedia, obviously. Um, and that's when I saw it, and I was like, I think it's a good reminder that numbers aren't everything, especially like in 2024. Like everyone's like, who has more followers? Which video has the most views? But that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing that you've put out there or that you have to offer.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, a lot of things that you don't expect to do well are the
Mhm.
ones that do the best, and vice versa. The songs that you spend the most time and energy and resources in on are sometimes just completely fall flat, and it's a shock to everybody, and everyone's like, what happened? And everyone wants to blame the marketing team or the ad team or the social media team. But the truth is that it's all random and arbitrary, and no one actually has the magic wand or the magic chip to be able to choose and identify what song is going to be the next big hit record. It just doesn't happen. So a lot of it is luck and timing, and you got to remember that as a musician, as an artist. And I always tell artists, future artists, like, just write a really good song and the rest will do itself. The rest will come out in the wash, and just know that you did everything you could do to make it great, because that's really what it is. 99% of this whole thing is just timing and luck, and waiting your turn to have another moment. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like especially when it comes to social media and stuff, like a lot of things. I was just complaining about this today. You can post the exact same video on like Instagram Reels and on TikTok. One will blow up like crazy and one just gets a few thousand views. So it also kind of depends where you are at the time, I guess.
Absolutely. There's a million factors when it comes to those algorithms, and it's has a lot to do with what else is playing in that exact moment, where you are geographically, and what people are searching in the area. But totally, we've I've experienced that myself where I've posted a video on TikTok that completely exploded, and then on Reels it just sort of fell flat. But yeah, I mean, you just play the game and you have fun, and the rest sorts itself out.
I feel like that's it. You gotta have fun, right? Or else what's the point?
Right.
Well, obviously, we're talking about like 20 years ago. Obviously, so much has happened since then. Fill us in. What's Jesse McCartney been up to?
Well, I mean, since Beautiful Soul, I mean, I've made a number of albums. I've obviously done a lot of acting projects and film and television. I mean, I won't recite my resume for you, but I've definitely been, I've been busy and I've been writing a lot. And as of late, in the last year or so, I've been working on a new project, my All's Well EP, which I just dropped about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and been traveling and touring around the United States, which was really fun. And this tour was like sold out everywhere, which was incredible. And we're considering adding more dates because it was such a big tour. And I got married, obviously. My personal life has changed. So there's a whole lot. It's up to you what you want to dive into.
Well, since you mentioned it last, how was married life?
Married life's good. We got married at the end of 2021, and we're coming up on our 3-year anniversary. So yeah, it's great. I have to figure out what we're gonna do actually, where we're gonna go, because I think I might be traveling and touring now. But things are great. She's an amazing partner. She's really understanding of my schedule and my life, and she's also really creative and helps me out with a lot of the stuff that I do creatively. So we're great. We have a great time together, and we're best friends and make each other laugh, and we're always getting into fun stuff. So it's all you can ask for.
Does she come on tour with you?
Yeah, she came on most of this tour. We have a dog too that traveled with us the first few weeks, but she was really like keeping me up at night, so we had to bring her home. And so she flew home for about a week and dropped her off, and then came back out. But yeah, she comes out. She comes out to travel, and we have so many friends around the country too. So it's fun to be able to like see the show, but also like go visit a cousin or go visit your sister or your mom or whomever. So
I mean, traveling is always fun, I guess. Like,
yeah,
maybe
it's
if you were on
exhausting.
tour for like years and years, maybe not, but like,
I will say, like, this tour was the first time we actually felt pretty exhausted during the travels. It was also like the height of allergy season, and I had super bad allergies, and everyone was just trying to stay healthy the entire time. And it's a lot of shows. It's like 24 shows in 34 days in 24 cities. It's a very intense process that a lot of people just think it's like so fun and like, but it's like an intense amount of work. So your biggest goal is to just not get sick. And
mm.
if you do that, then you can usually get through.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't, well, maybe they don't know or they don't remember that this is still a job, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you
Your
still.
friends visit you, and your friends want to have drinks and go out to dinner the night before or do things socially, and because they're there to have a good time. So they just assume you're there to have a great time. And you are, but it's like it's a different kind of good time. You're there to perform and to work. So
So the whole tour was basically around the US, right?
it was just the US. Yep.
Have you ever come over to Southeast Asia? I know you mentioned Japan early on.
Yeah, I was there in 2019 for like a sort of just an introduction and like a reintroduction. And we did a few small performances and some press to sort of like gear up get the engines lubed up. And then and then we're planning on hopefully coming back next year if we can to do a tour. But yeah, I love it over there, and the fans are great and they've been super supportive. So.
I think the fans would be very excited to see you come over to Southeast Asia.
Good, good. Well, we're gonna try and make it happen.
But in between, like obviously you've been creating music for a really long time, but has anything changed about the way that you create now, like compared to back then?
Has anything changed about the way I create? I mean, I guess The creative process is generally the same. I mean, I usually start out with a lyric or a melody idea that I love that I've written down in my cell phone, and then I take into the studio to develop. That process has been the same for a long, long time. Um, I would say I'm a little bit more thoughtful about the songs that I want to produce and actually spend time on. So now I will really whittle down the songs that I think have the most potential before spending a lot of time and money on them.
Mm.
And even at this point, I'll finish writing the song completely before we start, producing it. It used to be where I would go into the studio and just like hang out in the studio and see what happens, and we would write, and you know, it's just a huge waste of time and money. And so now it just makes more sense to have a song completed and even an arrangement in your head that what you want it to sound like, and just have all of your ideas on paper so that when the producer gets them, like they have a clear picture as to what you want. So I think I'm just a little bit more sensitive to time and like making sure that and efficiency,
Mm.
Um, but in terms of the actual creative creation, like or creative process, not much has changed. I'll be in the back of a Uber or like, in my kitchen and something will pop into my head and I'll just write it down and try to develop it later.
Saying that, it sounds like a lot of self-discipline is required. Like I especially during COVID, right? We were all stuck at home. Like forcing myself to do the work without the the push of someone else or like a schedule or something like that is really hard for me. Like it'll be days, like I'll procrastinate days and days and days and days. Does that happen to you? Like how do you make sure you're creating or writing?
Yeah, I mean, look, I still have very lazy days and lazy tendencies where I just want to like kick back, especially after a tour. I'm like ready to just completely crash and absolve myself of any responsibilities, turn my phones off and just be like, that's it. And then I realize, oh wait, I gotta make more music again. So I have a team around me and they're not afraid to say like, hey, it's time to get back to work kind of thing.
Get your butt back
But
up.
I think as I get older, I have started getting a little bit more aware of that on my own and becoming more responsible when it comes to time management and just being on top of things faster. Um, Especially when things are going really well and you have a lot of momentum. Like right now, things are just exploding and feeling really just organically great. And there's a ton of people showing up to the shows and all the social media is going well. And so when you feel that energy happening, you want to keep it moving forward. So, I was home 2 days from tour and I was really sick and I was still on the phone saying like, hey, what are we doing next? Like what's going on in the fall? What's the game plan for the next couple months? How are we keeping the momentum? So, it's definitely something that as you get older, I think you're a little bit better at. When you're
Mhm.
young, you can afford to just be like, whatever. But yeah.
So how are you keeping up with like everything? I know you said you got a team, but I think especially for people nowadays, it's not like you can just do one thing, right? It's not like, okay, I'm gonna make music and go on tour and that's it. You've got social media, that's a huge part of everything. Everyone seems to be doing a million things at once. Is it hard to keep up? Do you compartmentalize everything?
Yeah, it's hard to keep up. It's very it's exhausting, especially because, I'm an independent artist. I've been doing this myself now for the last 10 years. And, the buck stops with me. So it's like everything that happens, you know, you're either like disappointed or you're thrilled, but it's usually a result of something that you did or didn't do on your own. You can't really blame a marketing team or blame I mean, I guess you could, but as you're the boss now. And so every decision you make, you have to be okay with and know that it was one of your own. Um, and yeah, it's exhausting. It feels like there's always something else I could be doing. It feels like there's always something that I forgot to do or that I need to be doing. but I feel like that's a good feeling to have, to have that pressure on yourself is good when you're in the middle of promoting something because you want to know that you did everything that you can. And I say it's exhausting, but it's also really fun. I mean, it's when all the craziness is happening, it's intense, but it's thrilling. You're doing what you love, and very few people can say that they get to do that. So I always check myself and make sure I remember, like, you are getting to do something that is a one in a million job. So
I was watching your videos because, like we were saying, you just got off tour, right? And you were vlogging at the same time. Like, how did you remember to put all of that in?
yeah, I mean, I did that one day. I did like a day in the life of. I wouldn't say that I was like, vlogging every day because I just don't have the time, like the bandwidth or the capacity for that. But I decided like, oh, it'd be fun for people to come on a journey and like see what it's like waking up on tour and then what my day looks like. Cause I feel like a lot of people don't get to see that. So I just like, I just did one of these, every like
Mhm.
woke up and was just filming all morning and day. And but yeah, and that's the social media team, of course, going like, we need more content while you're on tour. You're doing too much stage content. We need stuff other than just being on stage. Variety seems to be like the biggest note that I get, right? We need
Mhm.
more variety. We need more. So it's hard. I mean, trying to be completely like creative and think of new stuff every single day is really a tough thing to do. And it's not just like you're writing music too. It's like trends and dances and like all these weird things that you have to like know how to do. And I mean, you figure it out, and I'm a pretty quick study, but it definitely is like a whole nother job in and of itself that you have to make time for.
Are you on social media a lot, like in your free time?
In my free time, probably not, but I mean, what's free time anymore? I mean, it seems like work is most if you're not posting on social media, you're not doing part of your job, and that part of your job really is daily or at least weekly by at the very least. So it's yeah, I feel like my free days are fewer and fewer, but it's just all how you frame it. If you frame it as a slog and as work and as a drag, then it's going to be miserable. But I'm trying to learn how to reframe things to being like a step forward rather than dragging me down. So social media was my biggest hurdle though. It was like I at first I really didn't enjoy it, and I still have like issues with certain parts of it, but I can see its relevance. And when I see the results and how it can affect your bottom line and you selling out shows, that to me is what makes it worth it. If social media is a tool that I can use to get more people in my audience to watch the music, then to me that's what makes it worth it.
So, safe to say at the end of the day, music is still your number one.
I mean, certainly in front of social media. I'm not I wouldn't consider myself this like social media influencer by any stretch, but I definitely yeah, music and acting and TV and film, like those are all still my three greatest passions. And I think we're in a world now where you just have to self-market, and people who are going to invest in you are relying on that. So you need to sort of get on board or just kind of become a dinosaur.
Oh my gosh, I have to ask you. So, obviously, I'm a radio announcer, right? Even pre-pandemic, your job is to sit in front of the mic and talk. That's it. Do you have people come up to you and say like, "Yeah, you're making music, but you need more followers. Like without the followers, we can't really do anything with you."
No one's ever said that to me, but I I mean that would be a great. I would love if somebody said that to me because it would be so funny. I mean, I think that look, you know what I would say is, okay, you have more followers, but how many tickets are you selling to your concert? I mean, like, to me, it's funny that like, people that have millions of followers on TikTok or Instagram, it looks really cool, and it's certainly like this vanity thing that I think people strive for, but it doesn't necessarily equate to record sales
Mm,
or selling concert tickets. In fact, a lot of the artists that aren't even on social media are some of the biggest artists in the world, but they just don't always correlate, you know? So I think it's one thing to have followers, but if you can't monetize it and you can't make it a business, like what's the point exactly? You know, it's like it feels kind of empty. But yeah, so no one has said that to me yet. But also, you know, I started on social media a lot later than this generation, so
mm.
I'm playing catch up, you know?
I don't even remember who the artist is. I feel really bad for that. But do you remember there was this story, I think a year or so ago, where this guy, he did sell tickets. A lot of people went to see his show, but they only sang along to that 30 seconds of the last song that he sang because that
Oh,
was how they knew him.
clip, because that was
Sorry.
the clip on Tik, because that was the clip on
Yes.
TikTok. That's very interesting. Ah, man, that's got to be. I wonder how that would make me feel as an artist. I mean, that's got to be like one of those things that is sort of disheartening because you're so creative and you put all your time into making this beautiful thing, and then people just show up for, oh wow. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, who you don't know what artist that was?
Can't remember his name and now I
Yeah.
feel really bad after telling
I
the story,
imagine that
but
happens a lot. I mean, look, there's tons of songs I hear on TikTok that I haven't really. I mean, there's a bunch that I've heard that I was like, wow, that's really good. Let me go listen to the full song. But there's some that are definitely trending that I've listened to that I've not listened to the whole song. I couldn't tell you what the verses were. I imagine that happens quite a bit. I mean, if you're a record company, you don't care as long as you're spinning the 30 seconds on TikTok. But
mhm.
yeah, as an artist, that's got to feel a little sad, you know?
Yeah, I always wonder how it feels because there's definitely been songs that were like number one on the charts because they were on TikTok, and then we put them on the radio, and then I hear the verses. I'm like, this is what it sounds like. It sounds nothing like what you remember from TikTok because the chorus can sound completely different from the rest of the song, right?
Totally. Yeah, that's wild. That's a very interesting fact. That's like getting a birthday cake and somebody just comes and takes all the icing off of it before they give it to you. It's just kind of satisfying, but not fully, especially when the audience just stops singing after 30 seconds. But that's interesting.
Yeah. Are there any content creators that you do look up to, like content wise?
Um, yeah, totally. Who are some of my favorites? Of course, you're putting me on the spot. I'm not going to be able to think of
You're
any, but
blanking. I get
yeah,
it.
totally blanking. I mean, I love anything food related. I love all the like food critics. There's a guy here, I forget his name. He does like all the best burgers and all the best like LA food joints. And like if you get a 10 out of 10 out from him, your business immediately explodes. Like it's like an instant being minted immediately.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I love anything food related. I love comedy. I love like couples comedy, and I love a lot of those like pranks too. Like there's these kids named I forget their name. They're twins. They're identical twins, and they go around just pranking people. Like one will walk into a store and say hi to somebody, and then like 10 seconds later they'll be in another aisle and like just freaking the people out. I love like goofy comedy like that. But yeah, I can't think of any specific influences off the top of my head.
Well,
I honestly spend little time watching TikTok.
mm,
I spend most of my time just like making them and posting,
hmm.
because
It
once
takes
you
up a lot
start,
of time.
yeah, it takes up so much time, and once you start doing the doom scrolling, it's over, you know.
Yeah. Well, speaking of like goofy content, you did collab with Young Gravy recently.
Yeah,
Did you know him from TikTok, from his music, or like you just met him? Like, how did that happen?
we met at a concert in Minnesota back in, I don't know, 2018 or 19. I was
Oh,
performing, and this was like pre-pandemic. And then during the pandemic, I was writing a bunch. But at the concert, I met him and we became friends. And we said to each other, like, hey, if there's ever an opportunity, we should work on something together. And years went by, and then I was in the studio and I wrote this song called Make a Baby. And the chorus felt very goofy and fun and very on brand for Young Gravy. And I just remember thinking this would be a good song for him. So I texted him the lyrics and the melody, and he liked it. And he just hit me back and he was like, yeah, let's do this. This sounds incredible. And I'll send you some verses. And so we just kind of went back and forth via text message and email, to be honest with you. And I think we got into the studio together only one time for like an hour, but most of it was done independently. And
Wow.
um, and then we mixed it and produced it and mixed it together, and then that was that. But that was just like a fun little passion project. And I know he grew up a big fan of like Beautiful Soul and some of my earlier music. And I just think he's a really funny character on TikTok, and he has got his own brand of humor and comedy. And so I admired him too, and I love his voice. So it just felt like a fun collab, but it was definitely a collab nobody was expecting, you know?
Yeah, I was it didn't really like go together in my head when I saw the cover art for it. I was like, what? Jesse McCartney and
Yeah,
Young Gravy?
yeah, I
And
know.
I'm not gonna lie, like hearing that you met him pre-pandemic is kind of like mind-blowing to me because I think the music landscape is very different sometimes. Like someone could be huge in the US, but we wouldn't know of them here in Malaysia until like maybe one song makes it out. Like I think some a good example is like Morgan Wallen.
Yeah,
Like he's like huge over there, right? But
yeah.
I've never played a single song of his on Malaysian radio, obviously because we don't listen to country music.
No
So
kidding.
Young Gravy to me came up with TikTok. I didn't even know he was doing anything pre-TikTok.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Yeah. Yeah, that is funny. I mean, yeah, he was just definitely in the beginning stages of his career. I think Betty had just come out, or one of his other songs had just come out. And he too was still sort of climbing. He wasn't exploding yet.
Mhm.
And then during the pandemic, I think it was when he was really crushing it. And then yeah, so I texted him then and I was like, "Hey, what do you think of the song?" But yeah, he's a funny guy. He actually texted me a couple days ago. He wants me to play a show with him in Minnesota. He's doing a festival. So I have to see if I'm in town, but yeah, he's a great guy, and the collabs are fun. They're a lot of work, though. I will say, collaborating with other artists, there's just so much red tape when it comes to getting something finished. That song with Gravy took, I'm not even kidding you, probably 9 months to finish, just because of not because of the writing, just because of like record companies and
Mm.
managers and PR and lawyers and all the things that you have to do to like actually finish something. So it doesn't happen overnight. But it is fun once the final product is finished.
I've actually always wondered about that. Like when you collab with someone, and obviously nothing is ever just 50-50, right? There are other people involved, producers, whatever it is. How do you like deal with things like that? Because obviously there's like percentages involved. How do you decide, oh, I wrote most of this song, or we both wrote it equally, or
There's a pretty universal rule now among musicians and songwriters that, if you're in the room together and you start a song from the beginning, from scratch, and you complete a song together, that you just share even ways. So if I'm in the studio, there was a bunch of writers on Make a Baby. I wrote that originally with like four other people,
wow.
and then and then so it's split five ways, okay? And then I brought it to Young Gravy and his producer, and they each got a cut. So I think technically speaking, we split that song seven ways. That's very rare. I haven't had a song with that many writers since I was like 16 years old. But yeah, that's kind of the general rule. And like, you don't want to feel like you're ever screwing somebody, right? Or
Mm.
so you try to be play it fair. And then there's other things that are negotiable like points, and it can really get into the weeds. And it depends on like who the producer is. They can get an upfront fee, or you could say, hey, I don't have upfront money, but we can pay you more on the back end once the song does well. There's so many different negotiating points and tactics that you can use and utilize, but ultimately you want everyone to be happy and not be resentful when they're finished with the song, because you want them to help promote it, and you want
Mhm.
everyone wants the same thing, right? Which is the song to do well, because when the song does well, everybody does well. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and like, contracts, and it's a mess. It's a total mess. But you try to keep it you try to let the other people that are good at that stuff do that, and just focus on the music.
Yeah, because it must be like a pros and cons thing, right? I'm sure like writing with other people is a lot more fun because obviously you can bounce back and forth. It's
Totally.
a bunch of friends together, but also then you have to deal with all of that, which you wouldn't have to deal with if you wrote it by yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that crazy. I mean, usually it's pretty standard practice. You do even splits on a song, and the lawyers draw up a pretty rudimentary contract, and that's that. There are mitigating circumstances where, like, if there's a producer who has, a million hits and they want, upfront, yeah, there are things that get negotiated, but usually it's pretty standard contract practice. And and so, yeah, you just go about, your writing, and that's that. But I would say that it doesn't deter me from that sort of stuff doesn't deter me from working with other writers, because it's going to be complicated later. I mean, I still enjoy working with writers because of the collaborative process, and because there's so many talented people I know that are great songwriters, that I want them in the room, and I
Mm.
want their ideas to be a part of my music. Um, so yeah, I generally always write with at least one other writer, and sometimes two. Never usually more than two. It's usually one or two. And
Hmm.
then because sometimes there can be too many cooks in the kitchen creatively too. If you have 6, 7 writers in a room together, it can get a little aggressive and heated. People are very passionate about their ideas, and it can get a little intense. But yeah, but yeah, you don't usually think of you don't ever stop yourself from being creative because you think there's going to be too many contracts.
Hmm. What about going on tour with other people though? Like you went on tour like early on, I guess, with like the Backstreet Boys, for instance. Like, do
Yeah.
you prefer doing your own thing or like joining another person on tour? Would you ever join somebody else on tour again?
Yeah, of course. We're discussing actually looking at another collaborative tour for next summer with a few different people, but yeah, if it makes sense, if it makes sense, creatively, and it makes sense financially, then absolutely. I mean, it's fun touring with other artists, it's a lot of fun. And it's fun to watch a crowd too, go from like one artist to the next in terms of singing their music. And it's also really effective in gaining a new audience, right? If you tour with somebody who has fans that aren't necessarily big fans of your music, it's a way for you to capture new fans. Um, but yeah, Backstreet Boys was great. I toured with them twice actually in the last 15 years. And that was always a lot of fun. But yeah, I would never say no to anything,
Mhm.
you kind of have to look at all of the different pros and cons and weigh your options and then decide.
Okay. Well, I know you just dropped a brand new album. Is the song with Young Gravy on that album?
Yeah, yeah, it's an EP. It's not a full-length album. So
Uh-huh.
it's about 4 songs, 5 if you count the remix with Young Gravy. So it's just it's a quick listen. It's probably 15 minutes of music and all together. And yeah, Gravy's song is on that EP.
So that one obviously you say is a little bit goofy, but the other one, I think it's called All's Well.
Yeah, it's
Um,
called, yeah, The Well.
oh,
Yeah,
The Well, yes, the album
yeah,
is called All's Well.
yeah,
That one's like really slow and like emotional.
yeah.
So how would you describe like the EP as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of there's movement, there's a little bit of something for everybody, right? I mean, a full-length album, has ballads and it has up tempos and it has mid tempos. So I did the same thing, but just in a very
Shorter.
short amount of time. So there's one ballad and there's a couple mid tempos, and then there's Make a Baby, which is more up tempo, or Silver Spoon, which is more up tempo. But yeah, it's a sad song. It's a vulnerable song. It's a song about, being in your darkest places and feeling low. And, it's a song about sort of anxiety and self-reflection and having somebody to help guide you through it and pull you out of it in your lowest moments. And I feel like that's a song a lot of people could relate to, particularly coming out of a pandemic,
Mhm.
where everyone was feeling very isolated. And and it's a song I haven't really done in a long time, a really good ballad. I just haven't done one of those in a really long time. So I felt like it was time to do one. And yeah, and I think it's a song a lot of people will communicate with. So
So, what can we expect coming up next? Like, it's a short EP. You said you're still working on your music. Are we gonna get a
yeah,
full-length album?
I like to keep people guessing.
I
It's like my new favorite thing is to just like not really tell anybody what I'm going to be doing. And actually, it's 50% of the time it's because I don't even know what I'm going to be doing. I like to sort of keep myself on my toes and also keep the audience on their toes. I would like to finish this album if I can, but we've had so much success and I'm so grateful, but we've had so much success with touring that we're just like, it's about, it's back to the momentum thing where it's like, I want to keep that momentum going. And I think we're going to try to see if we can add more fall dates here in the US and maybe even into parts of Canada and Mexico, maybe. But and then hopefully finish more music, but then next year come overseas. I mean, I want to come to places like Malaysia and Indonesia and the Philippines and Vietnam and all of Southeast Asia. And I want to go down to Australia. So I still have a lot of touring bucket list things that I haven't done in a long time that I really want to achieve. So I'm gonna try and write in between those touring opportunities, but it seems like the audiences are thriving right now, and live music is back in a very big way. The biggest I've seen it since the coronavirus. And so I just really want to capitalize on that. And so I'm probably going to be touring. That's my guess. That's my long-winded answer, but you never know.
I can't wait. Like, you're right though. Like, live music is coming back in a big way. Like, we've got shows, whether it's like a small show or big concert, like almost every single week over here right now.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
So,
there's
adding a little Jesse
every
McCartney show in,
yeah, every single venue every city that I was in around the US, every single venue was packed, like booked. Like there was just so much music going on across the country, but and still is. So yeah, but I gotta come see you guys next year, hopefully.
for sure. And I know a lot of people, okay, so obviously most people would know Beautiful Soul, Jesse McCartney. Maybe they haven't kept up in these years. So before I let you go, how would you reintroduce yourself or like grab the attention back from those fans and tell them
Yeah.
what you're doing now?
Well, I would say if you were a fan of Beautiful Soul or any of that music, that you're really going to love this music. Some of these songs are very reminiscent of the very early Beautiful Soul album, but just a bit more mature and older sounding. And my voice is developed even better. So I would say that, yeah, give it a shot. I think you'll really love this EP, All's Well. It's very emotional. It's very kitschy and fun and lyrically tasty. And I think if you were a fan of me then, you'll be a fan of me now. So definitely give it a shot, give it a listen.
And if anyone wants to keep up with what's going on with Jesse McCartney, where should they go?
Oh, you can find me on TikTok. I'm a social media influencer now, right? That's like my number one job these days. Music is second. Yeah, you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, Spotify, all the DSPs. Yeah, I'm sure if you just punch me into Google, you'll figure it out.
Basically, you're everywhere.
That's it.
Well, thank you so much for taking such a big chunk of your day out to talk to me. It was really fun.
It's my pleasure anytime. Thank you so much for the wonderful questions, and hopefully I'll see you next time I'm flying over to Southeast Asia.
Fingers crossed, 2024, 2025. I'll see you in person.
Sounds great. I love it.